Well, good morning, everyone. As we start off this new week, a couple things I want to take a look at here on Sunday. We're looking at a satellite image from Sunday. And a couple areas I want you to pay attention to are right here in this part of Texas. I want you to take a look at this cloud field that's sliding to the south here on Sunday night. And also I want you to look at the snowpack that's in parts of the northern plains. So let's start here in Texas. Some very large storms did blow up in Texas, and for some, this was some of the first meaningful precipitation we've seen in and around Lubbock and this part of north central Texas. Unfortunately, some of these storms put down up to baseball-sized hail yesterday, in addition to delivering some heavy rainfall. Now, that cloud field that's stretching down here across the Gulf Coast over into parts of the southeast, most of the weekend it spent time right here from eastern Texas all the way to North Carolina, where it did deliver a tremendous amount of rainfall. Some places picked up several inches of rain, 1 to 6 inches in parts of the Carolinas. Now, overall, I saw this precipitation. I have to say, yeah, it kind of ruined the weekend, at least the beginning of it, especially for like the Masters and whatnot. But that moisture coming into this part of the Carolinas up toward Virginia, this has been an area this spring that had been very dry, so we like to see that moisture coming into that area. But as that front sagged farther to the south, we end up getting some light north winds early this morning coming from this direction out of parts of Virginia into North Carolina. And because of that, we did have this morning freeze warnings out, frost advisories out for this particular area. So this has been a really cold morning, and this is a pretty late event for this part of the country. Okay, the last thing I said to have a look at here is the snowpack you see right underneath this region. And what we're going to be watching here this week is very mild air advancing to the north. That was kind of a main theme of our forecasts for this week. And we want to know how we're going to eat into this snowpack. So let's go back to this one more time. This is the weekend's precipitation, so primarily along the stalled out front, the severe storms over part of Texas, some snow in this part of Wisconsin, and also right here in parts of North Dakota, and then the coastal precipitation with a little bit into the Columbia Basin in the Pacific Northwest. Now, just as I mentioned a moment ago, the moisture that did come down into here was some of the first they've seen there for a while. You look back over the last 30 days, there is a very pronounced region in through here that just continues to miss the precipitation from each of these large events. And we need to see if we're going to be able to return some moisture into those areas. But one of the places where there'll be a lot of moisture returning to the soil and into the river systems is going to be what's here. And that's because the snowmelt we're expecting in the northern plains and upper Midwest this week could start our pretty significant spring flooding fight. So they've already got out. This is all hydrologic outlook from Oregon all the way through Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and then here into the upper Midwest, where these warmer temperatures are starting to come in. And we're going to expect to see this change right in this area as well as the snowmelt begins. This is actually an avalanche warning over here in parts of Utah. And this particular week, it's interesting to see that it's the warmer, nicer weather that could be causing the problems for a lot of places. By the way, one last color to talk about right in through here. This is all high wind warning for later on today. Okay, so here's the big idea. The warmth is already beginning to spread. We see the cooler air still in place down in the southeast compared to average. But today on Monday, we're expecting temperatures to be pushing close to 80 on the southern edge and surrounding that snowpack that's parts of the upper Midwest and northern plains. Getting into Tuesday, this will be a really hot one on Tuesday for this section of the country. Some places up to 30 to almost 40 degrees warmer than normal. Now, if you watch Montana, this will show us where later in the week the colder air that's coming with this trough in the northwest will start to push through. So we might see upwards of a 50 to 60 degree swing in temperatures in parts of Montana from the beginning of the week to the middle and end of the week. But out ahead of it, some very, very mild weather. So remember, this weekend we had snow here, and now we're pushing maybe upper 70s in this area. And you notice how this is all snow-cooled air right here over parts of North Dakota. So this goes from Wednesday into Thursday, and then into Friday. And we have big question marks surrounding what might be coming out of the Rocky Mountains right in through here as a storm system late this week into this weekend that could follow that temperature gradient right in through this area as the big warmth pushes into New England. So there's Saturday's temperatures getting into Sunday. Now you noticed much of the Northwest was cool this week, but it kind of opens back up to a warmer pattern, and that's because this pattern is not settled. It's full of a lot of short waves, and what this is going to do is it's going to push systems across the United States with good regularity. But there is one thing that is changing, and that is the depth and extent of the cold air that has been throughout the country for the last couple of months is expected to really just push north and stay there. New map I'm going to start showing you here. This is looking at the next 7 days of total accumulated growing degree day units. This is using a base of 50 Fahrenheit, a max of 86. So this will update every morning on our website at about 4 a.m. And so there's going to be a lot of folks in this particular region that are going to be aggressively going after planting this spring crop. Now we're going to talk about what these temperatures are going to do in a few moments, but I want to just point you that snowmelt issue that I'm concerned about here in the Northern Plains. I also started generating a new series of maps here to help us understand this. Okay, first thing I did was everywhere that there's snow in the European model right now, I just maxed it out at 40 inches every place that it's above that. So that's why you see this kind of uniform color. What we're going to be watching is you're not going to see too much change in the west, but we're going to watch right in through here for how the snow could possibly be melting with all of this warmth. So this is a map of snow depth in the model. Now I am concerned, this is Saturday going into Sunday. Did you see it coming out of Colorado and then spreading through parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin? This is a single model run, but there is the potential for a late week, or really a weekend system that could put down some snow in this area after a very mild week. Big question marks on that one. But if I just take you all the way out here to the end of the 10-day forecast, notice how the repeated shots at mild air are expecting to kind of reduce this snow area in a big way. Watch again. Here's where we start, and here's where we finish. That's the effect of this mild air. Now I mentioned the patterns open and moving. Take a look. This is a northern hemisphere view. And what we're doing is we're just playing out here through this week, and we're going into early next week. In fact, I'll just stop it right here out on day 10. And what I want you to notice is, generally speaking, there's a trough of low pressure sitting near or around the Arctic or North Pole. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 separate troughs of low pressure around it. So the flow has to go around these something like this. All right, let's just kind of do that real fast. That's a lot of waves in the pattern. And whenever we see a high number of waves, the pattern tends to progress. It tends to move east with time. Longer waves progress or stand still, move to the west, or stand still. But there is a lot of cold water along the west coast, which is one of the reasons why we keep seeing more systems develop in the Gulf of Alaska. But if we play this out, let's go have a look at it. This is the European model on the right, the GFS on the left. Now this week, we're going to watch early in the week for systems to come into the Pacific Northwest today and tomorrow. This is more snow for the Cascades at high elevation, some precip into the interior of Oregon and also the Columbia Basin. This then moves some snow into parts of the Northern Rockies. And about the time that we watch that try to move out into the plains, it runs into a sizable ridge here that has a cutoff low to the south of it. And what that's going to do is stop that system from progressing into the plains and in the upper Midwest. And to the south of it, right here, later on this week, we're going to watch a little cutoff low begin to form. I think the European model has a better handle on it. But as you watch that cutoff low form, you'll notice that this system I mentioned really just hits parts of Montana, getting here into parts of the upper Midwest, but it's not a big, massive system that shows up again Thursday, Friday. Now, what we're going to be watching for is the southern edge of this. So that little system sneaks here, leaves a frontal boundary there, and there's a second wave that's going to try to come out of Colorado late this week, in fact, early Saturday morning. And this is the one where we have big question marks. You see, the models are attempting, by the time we get through the day on Saturday, to take that low, and you can see in both models, maybe wrap some snow around the back side of it. We could see stronger storms to the south of it, right here along the front. But this will sweep through and kind of slow down some of the progress that was happening in the Midwest, Mid-South, the Eastern Corn Belt, and parts of the plains with getting this planting done or spring field work done. Now, I'll be honest with you, I know you're watching the models and they look like they've got good agreement on this, but the placement of where the snow is going to be is not the same spot, and it's not yet settled. And then what happens after that? Well, that moves out. We get a shot at cooler air through next Tuesday, and then temperatures just rebound again while the west takes on another low, specifically the Pacific Northwest. Okay, kind of a complicated pattern this week, but let's break it down into a couple of different maps. And what we talk about snow first. This is playing through this week, and there's the weekend system that could spread some snow in Wyoming and Colorado, and then potentially here in parts of the upper Midwest along the Mississippi River. This is the European model solution. Take a look, okay? This is the GFS solution, same time period, different outlook, okay? So we have to watch this next system this weekend very carefully. On the total precipitation side, we're going to go through Monday into Tuesday. I'll call out the days. You kind of keep an eye on your area. This is now getting through the day on Wednesday, Thursday, getting into Friday. So here's the late week precip here. This is the system coming out late this week into Saturday. And this might be the first time we start to spread some more moisture into this particular area as we kind of slide through this week. In terms of the probability of getting at least an inch of, let me rephrase that. The probability of getting less than a half of an inch of total precipitation is shown here. So you'd say that for the most part, the next 10 days favors drier weather, with the exception of here, down in the south and southeast, and in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, what about week 2? The models have continually, especially the the GFS and the CPC have continued to kind of overpromise southern plains rainfall. But this is what they're all looking at for week 2. So I told you the pattern, if it stays open, we get another shot at some drier weather in the midsection of the country and a continued chance to get the crop established here. So what we'll be concerned about is temperatures. Now we know we saw this at the beginning of this forecast, major rebound in temperatures. And you look over the next 7 days, everywhere in gray is where we expect to have a temperature at or below freezing. And this was this morning, right in through here. So there's a broad area of warmth opening up. But I want to remind you that we could still see, it's not even the middle of April yet, still see good shots at colder air coming down and hitting these areas that have just been planted. So I'm going to play this relatively quickly. There are no numbers on this. We're going to have to use the colors. What you're looking at here is whenever I make this abrupt change in color over to these blues, and that represents where we've got frost. I even put a contour line on it. So here's all the mild air this week, Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. All of this is kind of the diurnal cycle in temperatures. What I'm concerned about as we go into the weekend, here it is. This is when the low goes through. And if we just watch, this is Monday morning, and this is Tuesday morning. Notice we could get another frost sweeping into this part of the country by next Tuesday morning behind the low that exits late this weekend into early next week. So it's just a reminder that even though we're going to have a lot of warmth coming now, we could still see some colder air coming in behind this. Broader picture though, here's the next 15 days on temperature anomalies as a 5-day sliding window. You're going to see more frequent shots at colder air coming into the west, with the warm-ups lasting only a couple of days, primarily because of the colder water that's off the west coast. What we just keep seeing here is rebounding warmth in the mid part of the country after brief shots at some cooler air. Last couple things here, Climate Prediction Center. This is their newest outlook for week 3 and week 4. This is the end of April, the beginning of May. We're going to talk about this in tonight's in-depth report, as I don't feel as though the pattern is as settled as we thought it was on Friday, and that's when they released this map. So we'll talk about some of the new updates and provide some better guidance on this to kind of just amplify what the Climate Prediction Center was saying here. But I want to show you two last things here. This would be the next 10 days from the European model globally. Notice how we're wetter across much of Europe. We have some tropical moisture streaming right into this part of Australia, getting all the way down into parts of South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, down to this area. New Zealand's also wetter. We still see better precipitation in and around the Yangtze River and to the south here. But if you come down into South America's last week's forecast are really verifying quite well. We continue to see wet conditions across most of Brazil, except for Rio Grande do Sul to Uruguay and along the Paraná River down here. So that's really kind of a continuation of the forecast we saw last week. Okay, one more thing. If you get a chance to read the report, we do a comparison between the newest June, July, August precipitation forecast from the NMME against the European model. And this will also be something we continue to discuss in the in-depth reports. Hey, thanks for giving me a little extra time in this video today. Got a lot to be discussing, but I'll talk to some of you again tonight. Thanks.